Hey, everybody, welcome back live with Tracy. Today, we're going to be dropping some really interesting insights for you guys on how to pivot, disrupt, and transform organizations. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with my new friend, Marcia, who has made my brain explode on our first coffee chat. And therefore, I felt it fit in very well with our theme of creating community through conversations. All my C words are mixed up today. It's Friday. You guys know me by now. Friday, the lingo is not there anymore. But I'm really excited to bring this conversation to you guys today. And before we get started, I'm going to give Marcia a little opportunity to introduce herself. And we're kind of basing our conversation today around a book that Marcia wrote. And so, Marcia, tell us a little bit more about who are you and why do people need to be having the conversation about pivoting, disrupting, and transforming?
Great. Thank you so much, Tracy. I love being here for a lively conversation. You just hit on all the topics I could just go on and on about. So, but so where did I come from? I used to be excruciatingly shy. And at the end of our conversation, I don't think you'll believe me. You'll say, what a liar, because that's what I hear. It's like, there's no way you were ever shy. But I was great one-on-one having a conversation, but then put me in a room with 4 or 5 people that I even know, and I won't speak up unless I'm asked a question. That's where I came from. So then over time, I did my pivot because I had mentors that just pulled the natural leadership out of me. And that's how I'm doing what I'm doing, because I feel such a responsibility for that. So my first career was corporate communications and marketing. I even did some teaching around that time, 7th grade English. So that was so much fun. And then I went to work for a small boutique consulting firm owned by Dr. Perry Gluckman. And he was good friends with Dr. W. Edwards Deming, who went to Japan after World War II and helped Japan out of their crisis, taught them a new philosophy of management. And long story short, that's what I've been helping leaders and organizations across all sectors, boards of directors and teams and so forth, learn and apply for more than 25 years now. So I learned from my mentors, went to Dr. Deming's 4-day seminars, went to 20 of them, co-founded the Bay Area Deming User Group, which was the largest study group in the world, and another nonprofit. And then I've just been focusing on helping the leadership teams either come out of a crisis. Maybe sometimes they call and they're near bankruptcy. Other times they just want to improve their organization. I've had clients that called and said, Marcia, I want to go from, here are my list of problems, but I want to take the company from 30 to 35 or 40 million. Can you help? And we went from 30 million to 300 million, because who knows what we can do, what's possible. And then there are the organizations that, and we've seen many of them, today and the past 2 years, that have scaled so exponentially, like Zoom, Zoom and Stripe and so forth. They've just grown and grown and grown through because of the pandemic. And they had a new market, new sets of clients. So that's what I've been up to, helping organizations pivot, disrupt, transform themselves and their organizations. And if they don't, they can end up struggling, floundering, and sometimes not surviving.
So there's so much that we're going to talk about here today, you guys. I want to just, before we get carried away with ourselves, that if you guys are watching live and you do have a question, please post it in the comments and we will address that question specifically for you around pivoting, disrupting, and transforming. But I feel like we're in an environment right now where there's a lot of conversation about these types of things, but there's kind of old habits that are keeping people stuck in being able to actually take action on some of these things. So let's look at it from the perspective of pivoting right now. And there were a lot of businesses that had to pivot at the beginning of the pandemic because they just couldn't do business the old way they did business. So, what are some of those things, Marcia, that you see that stop people when they see that a pivot is necessary, but they end up not being able to make a move?
Yes. So actually I did my book, I didn't write it 2 years ago when the pandemic started. It, actually came out 3 years ago. So the word pivot wasn't just for the pandemic, even though I wish I had a dollar for every time I hear that word now.
Right?
Yes, it's, ubiquitous, right?
Mhm.
So, great leaders are scanning the environment and being ready to pivot anytime. So let's think about the definition of pivot. It is often an abrupt change, an abrupt, rapid change in direction to meet a need, to solve an issue, to capture a market, uh, to chase an opportunity. So the now we have hundreds of examples of pivoting because of the pandemic. So we saw that we had to pivot in our work life. We had to go home and work. We had to pivot at school. We had to go home and learn, and we had to go to Zoom or webinars and so forth. Not that we weren't doing it at all before, but the acceleration was just immense. Telemedicine, televideo, to be able to get treated if we didn't have to go to the hospital, and it was, something, more minor, that we could jump on the Zoom for a doctor's appointment. There were many, many things that were possible before, but there was resistance to change, resistance to improving. So what the pandemic did was it helped people, that disruption helped people, forced people to pivot and to adopt new ways of doing things, new ways of thinking. Was it always, sometimes it was good, sometimes it wasn't, sometimes, that's the thing. It's like we have, fatigue issues now and burnout and mental health and so forth. We had those before. They were in different ways, and a lot of it has to do with mindset. So why is it that some people were able to pivot and embraced, the changes that the pandemic put in their face, and others hunkered down and got stuck and got on in a lot of anxiety, and then went to their computers and didn't have any healthy boundaries around doing their work, didn't take breaks, didn't walk away, didn't go get exercise, didn't just go for, if we were quarantined, well, you're not quarantined, you're in your car. So if you can go for a drive, go to the post office and mail a card to somebody. That's what I did. I mean, maybe I wouldn't leave the house for a week, but if I would go out every so often just for a 5-minute drive to run an errand, oh, yes, the world still exists out there. People are alive, and it's like, so we had to get out of this stuck mindset as well. And sometimes, just like in any organization, there are organizations that get stuck, and they are the ones that, it's kind of like the fork in the road. Some leaders, some organizations get stuck in their thinking. They do it status quo, the way they've done it for 10, 20, 30 years. And the improvements are so incremental, they're actually not that helpful. And they just get stuck in this wheel going round and round. But that stuck mindset doesn't help them improve or grow or face the challenges that they need to, doesn't help them continually serve their customers and create new markets. And so that stuck mindset or that fixed mindset, and there's a book about that written by Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford. I want to give her that credit. I think it's called Mindset. Anyway, and then there's the future mindset. So continually questioning, challenging your old beliefs and assumptions, challenging that quote unquote best practices, the old way, the way that you've always done things, whether it was the way you did it 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago or 20 years ago. Think about, what are we trying to accomplish together? Tie it to the customer, your market, the future market. You've always got to be thinking future. And when doing that, then you think of creative ideas, possibilities, opportunities, serving, and that helps people be creative together. So they love coming to work. They find joy in learning, working, improving, and innovating together. And that's key. And if you always think in terms of that, the same is true in schools. I've worked with the school districts, and they have these long mission statements, like a paragraph or two. And when you ask them what is they don't know it. But then if I work through with them and I finally get to a point, I say, why did you go into your career? Because they want to teach children. So could it be that your compelling purpose, your aim, is to create joy in learning? Those simple words, create joy in learning. And then everyone, from the teacher, the staff member, the school nurse, the janitor, the first grader, if you ask them, how do you contribute to that? Every one of them can give the answer. So the janitor might say, I'm here to create a safe and clean environment for the children to learn. So we've got to simplify and get rid of the waste, the complexity, the buzzwords, the dysfunctional finger pointing, blaming, criticizing, judging each other in our organizations. That's why we have to change a lot of the best practices that we have. For example, performance appraisals, holding individuals accountable, focusing on the bottom line, whether they be grades or SAT scores, which thank heavens are starting to get, I want to say deleted. We just need to get rid of things that actually don't work for us and create the waste and complexity that causes the fatigue and the burnout.
Well, you covered so many things there. I'm just like so into listening to you talk about it, because one of the things that I believe in and I love to explore is this concept of community. And one of the things that you talked about was that it's about being in it together, right? Like we all hear that the teachers and the janitors and everybody is like working together on this mission. So let me ask you this, because it's nice that it's nice that a global pandemic disrupted all of this for us. But how can we create an environment of disruption so that we can continually transform and build that kind of into the DNA of whatever community that is? Maybe it's a school, maybe it's a corporate organization, maybe it's a community league, wherever it might be. How do we build that ability to disrupt into those types of cultures?
The first thing is leadership has to think differently. It all starts with leadership. And so if leaders, for example, think that their job is to focus on the bottom line, hold individuals accountable, get certain numbers, motivate people. That's a huge one. That's not their job. And that would be like, what? What is she talking about? Well, their job is to create an environment where people are self-motivated. That's where the power is. You create that environment where people can contribute and then and invest in the people. So make sure that you really are bringing them education, bringing them the skills, giving them the resources that they need to do their job. One of my friends and an author, Peter Schultes, years ago said, if you want people to do a good job, give them a good job to do. Kind of simple, right? We can really get back to simple things. We can focus on quality, continual improvement, always having a conversation about how can we improve, but is improvement enough? Is it fast enough? We can improve. We could improve and improve and improve and improve the buggy whip. Is that going to get us to the horseless carriage, to the car, to the electric car, to the flying car? No, we have to innovate. So we have to improve and innovate. It's not enough just to have continual improvement. So the job of leadership is to create the system and optimize it so that the people can work together and then improve and innovate and go forward. That's their job. Focus on what is your compelling purpose. The leadership has to define that. They don't need to tell people how to do it. Create the compelling purpose and then ask the right questions. I developed something called the strategic compass, and it's a set of 5 questions that are interdependent. They depend on each other to be successful. But based on, like, I tell my executive teams, my boards, you can have one sheet of paper with those 5 questions. And if you answer those and understand how they are interdependent, you can run an organization. I don't care if it's a small private company or local nonprofit or the military, the Fortune 100 corporation, a hospital system, an education system. It takes focus. And that is what I hear so many leaders struggling with right now is they don't know, they're struggling with being able to focus, prioritize, create the environment. That's really challenging right now because they've got, some people might be at work, some people are remote, they've got hybrid, they've got, do we bring them in? And maybe they've moved to other cities now. So every organization is different, and they have to figure out what is going to work for their organization, for the business, and link it to their customers, their members, their patients, their students, whoever they're serving.
Yes.
So it's really, how do we optimize the whole, not maximize? So we've got, a lot of those old words that we use, like maximize instead of optimize. And we just need to, we benchmark. That's a waste of time. We have annual performance appraisals. Can you imagine the thousands of hours you can save by abolishing performance appraisals? Because I ask many times when I'm talking to an audience, how many of you have as one of your values either collaboration, teamwork, or cooperation? Almost all the hands go up because those are important values, one of them. And then I ask, okay, how many of you have performance appraisals, annual performance appraisals? And generally about 80% of the hands go up. And then I mention, well, performance appraisals give the ability to judge, blame, criticize, rank, and rate your employees. This creates an internal competitive environment, and it creates dysfunctional and sometimes toxic work environments. So can you explain to me, I need to understand, when you say you want collaboration and teamwork, how putting in a best practice of annual performance appraisals is going to help you achieve that. But so many organizations have now abolished them. And I'm hopeful that over time, more and more and more organizations will get rid of performance appraisals. And I'm not saying that, what I am saying is you have to have communication. If you have healthy two-way communication, and there are many ways to do that, one-on-ones, town hall meetings, Zoom. I don't want to focus too much on the coaching and mentoring and all that stuff, because it can be pretty empty. But having a robust conversation about the work, the customer, how can we improve? How can we support each other? How can we improve this process? Or do you have the information that you need? What's working? What's not working? Having those conversations on a weekly, basis with your team, or monthly, whatever it takes. It might be daily, but it might be monthly. It depends on the work that you're trying to accomplish for the customer.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, at the end of the day, it really is about looking critically at what are we saying we want to accomplish and what are we doing.
Yes.
And are they in alignment? Because this is something that I would encourage you guys who are listening to this to like broaden your minds a little bit around that as well too, right? This is not a concept that is unique in a corporate work environment. It makes sense in the school scenario. It makes sense if you're a job seeker, right? And you're trying to explore new opportunities. And are you showing up in alignment with who you want to be when you go to a job interview? It makes sense for entrepreneurs who have left corporate now are starting their own business, right? You thought all of these things were wrong. So now are you building on that again? Because that's all that you know, instead of saying, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Yes. And how do I get there? Yes. And sometimes, a lot of the time, actually, we need to get over, we have to be able to let that go. You have to be able to say, like, you know what, this process, this type of sales process I follow, or this marketing KPI, or this whatever, is bogus. It's not actually doing anything to contribute towards building our community as a company, as vendors, as clients, right? It's not doing anything. It's not contributing to that. So let's let it go, right? Let's find a new way that we can show up and we can do those things that's going to be more in alignment with what we're trying to do. And I do want to just, so Lisa was sharing that fatigue and burnout are number one problems in corporations because they're so short-staffed, right? And this really comes from, again, I won't mention the name of the company, but my husband and I talk about this a lot. And like, what is the job of the company at the end of the day? If you are a food distributor, your job at the end of the day is to get the food to the people, right? Sometimes that means you're going to have to pay more money for a load to get it to the store. Sometimes that means you can negotiate good rates with producers because they're overstocked, right? Sometimes it means savings. Sometimes it means investment. It doesn't necessarily, when we have these like really narrow views of what this has to look like, that's where we lose that ability to innovate and to be creative and to disrupt and to pivot and to transform and all the things we're talking about, because we have such a narrow view of what I need this many people to get this minimum viable job done. The bane of my existence is the phrase minimum viable, because it's just like, What's the minimum amount of effort we can put in to do this? Well, let's say your corporate value is cares about people, right? Do you actually want to go to market and be like, we care about people, but we're putting the minimum viable amount into caring about people? Well, I'm
Yes,
going to
lip
choose
service
someone who
doesn't
cares
help.
more about people.
Yeah, lip service does not equal transformation.
No. And my background is marketing. I will tell you guys, there's a lot of lip service in marketing. It's
Absolutely.
kind of makes me sad. There should be less of it, maybe one day. But these are the types of things I want you guys. What I'd love for you guys to take away today is just how do you show up in alignment with what you're trying to do? If you're a leader, how are you doing that at work? Right? How is the entire company? Or are we all aligned on what even our values mean? I feel
You
like
know what,
a lot of people
Tracy?
aren't aligned there.
You know what? I'm even going to pivot your word because we're used to the word alignment
Mhm.
and it's linear thinking. We want to shift that. We want to pivot that word from, and one of my colleagues who I dearly adore, respect, or her knowledge is off the chart, Dr. Sheila Scheinberg. She told me, she said this one day because I was using the word align quite a lot. And she said, Marcia, that's a linear process, but transformation is nonlinear. So instead of aligning, we want to think about the system, all of the parts of the system. It's nonlinear. And then we're talking about connections, the interdependency. And so it's not a line. It's going to instead be, think about your body. So you've got all of the major parts of the body. Some are essential, like you need your brain and your heart and some certain organs. But as much as I like my hand, I don't need it. I like my leg or my foot. I don't need it. This little finger, I don't need it. So there are the essential parts, and that's what you do with your organization. You identify your essential parts, and then if you have and connect the dots, and those are the parts that you make sure are supported by the other parts. So that is system optimization. And then you improve the processes, you improve, also you want flow. So it's not just flow of the work, that's important, but the work doesn't flow without information flow and communication flow. Those three things are critical, and they're interdependent. Another thing that management has to think about are their strategies. So three key strategies that oftentimes get forgotten are, number one, quality as a business strategy. Start with quality that, and the customer is the one that defines quality. And the board of directors or your management team are the ones that make quality. It's not down in the organization. And so if I call the airline and I'm on hold for 20 minutes or 2 hours or 3 hours these days, that's not quality to me. So if I'm the CEO, it's my responsibility to take one of the highest quality measures by my customer and figure out how to improve that process so that when that phone rings, that customer gets someone at the other end immediately. Maybe I'll wait a minute. But so quality is a business strategy that we've forgotten about. We used to talk about it a lot, and it was important. In the 1980s and the 1990s, the focus was on quality. We don't even hear the word anymore. Secondly, continual improvement as a business strategy, but that's not enough. And we always have to ask the question, is it fast enough? Because of the, like the buggy whip example. And then innovation. as a business strategy. We don't survive if we are not innovating. And again, we are thinking about serving customers, but future markets, because we're not going to have the same customers for 5, 10, 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for challenging me on that, because I don't believe that anything is linear. Even I do a lot of work in personal branding, and a personal brand is not linear, right? Like,
Yes.
we are all these mosaics, and there's lots of different interconnected pieces. And I love the thought of thinking about, I like to think about a business as an organism, right?
Yeah,
Like, we
exactly.
grow, we contract, we lose hair, right? But that's not critical. There's like all of these things that it's important to consider their contribution to the overall. And Lisa's agreeing, we need more. she hears more about quantity than quality nowadays.
Yeah.
And again, from the marketing perspective, it's all about automation, right? Like, we're going to automate all the things. And when we lose, what do we lose in quality because we've automated an experience?
Right.
So, Marcia, I know that you work predominantly with leaders, but I wonder if you have any tips based on Lisa's job or comment here. My job is to show up every day, which I do, but it's a lot of work to do all that's expected of me. So, when you're just a person, you're just a person, and you don't have the corporate ability to pivot, disrupt, and transform, do you have any advice for how maybe you can influence that, types of questions you can ask, types of exploration you can even do for yourself if you're going to be looking for a new job, and what you want to make sure you find in the next space?
Yes. So for one thing, so if we look at leadership, there are the leaders who have the position and the title. By that, they are a leader, but not necessarily. Sometimes they're nice people. Sometimes I don't know how they always got the position, but they are not leaders. Leaders, what I look for a leader is openness to learning and questioning, and committed to deep learning and application, not afraid. And then number 2, courage. They have to try new things, because transformation is hard work. When we talk about it, it doesn't sound so hard, but it is going to pivot so many of the beliefs that we've always had. We were brought up as children to compete, even at home. Okay, kids, who can get their pajamas on first? You get the bigger bowl of ice cream. We instill this competition when the kids, when they're little. Then we drive in the grades, the gold stars, they have to get awards, and so forth for seems like everything, right? So we have to question everything. So, but what I believe in is that everyone has a natural leadership within them. For some, it's pretty deep, and they need maybe some help or encouragement to pull out that natural leadership. And for some, it's just below the surface, and so we just have to give them opportunities, and they will pop out amazing leadership. We will discover leaders in our organizations we had no idea that they were there. Over time, once people learn this new philosophy of management, and they can use their natural leadership, and they can speak up and contribute and so forth. Once that is happening, then the organization will discover that they have self-organizing teams. People will get together naturally around issues, challenges, problems, opportunities, and take the organization forward. And what really happens individually is that people can really begin to question what doesn't really need to be done at their desk or in their job, and get rid of it.
Mhm.
Just take 50 to 80% of their current work and put it in a garbage can. That I have never seen, when I've gone into an organization, any organization that doesn't have at least 50% of waste. So if you get rid of that waste and complexity, the buzzwords, the old beliefs and assumptions of best practices, the thousands and thousands of wasted hours, the creativity, the freedom, the strategizing, the support that people can give each other is transformational. It's off the chart. That's when transformation happens, is because together people know how to let go of the old ways of thinking and operating and do it differently. And they can, I mean, there's no reason that for most organizations, they can't take their work from a 5-day work week and in 10, 12-hour days, and oftentimes take it, to a 3 or 4-day work week. I just read an article, or basically saw a headline this morning saying that PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they're giving 2 weeks off to all employees for a recharge, I think they called it, something like that. Well, in Europe, I lived in Switzerland for a year. They did that every year, and it was 3 weeks, plant shutdown. It's like, lock the doors. Nobody goes into the office, into the facility, into the plant, because it's locked. Even the president doesn't go in.
This is the thing, right? Even when I hear that, I'm like, wow, in Canada, you just like, that's the minimum mandatory vacation. Like, you have to get that. Even if you have no education, no whatever, that's what you get. It's crazy how those things happen. And I love how Lisa's saying too. And this is the perspective that there's so much power in, right? When we get rid of the waste, there's rewards. There's rewards for everybody, right? Like, the employees stop doing, like, I'll be honest, when I was in my last management job, I was like, how much of this could be done by a monkey? Like, I don't need to do this. This is not something I need to do. Like, most of the stuff didn't need to be done at all, right? I'm reporting on these KPIs. I'm doing all these things that are not contributing to anything at the end of the day, but you're paying me full time to like come and do these things. That's not a good use of my time as a human, right? And this is part of what's driving the Great Resignation as well, as people are just like, well, no, you clearly don't care about me and my experience. So
You don't feel appreciated or recognized. But I worked with an organization too that people wouldn't go home at 5 o'clock because the VP stayed until usually 7 or 8. So they didn't want to leave before she did. Now, if she had to go out to a meeting, let's say at 5 o'clock, whoa, they're out of there. But because it was the culture that, well, we don't want to show their work could be done for the day, but still they would sit at their computer. It's just, it was like,
I had a manager that once told me I should come. Oh, so a coworker of mine was coming in on the weekend, and it was impressing the management team. And my immediate thought was, why can't he get his job done in the 8 hours a day during the week, right? Because for me at that point, I think I had about 2 hours of work to do a day. He was like, if you want to make an impression on the management team, you should think about coming in on the weekend. And I'm like, I don't have anything to do during the week. Why would I come in on the weekend and do nothing either?
Yeah.
Like, maybe you should be asking him the question why he can't get his work done in a regular work day, and give me some more stuff to do because I am bored.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Lots of things.
So if leaders instead think about, let's create joy in work where people can take pride in their work, but the work is exhilarating when we can do it together. Even the people who have kind of independent work, like I think coding or some engineering projects or writing and things like that. But we don't do all of those things in a vacuum all of the time. We want interaction. It's healthy. So
And some people derive great joy. I worked with a developer who derived great joy by just sitting and programming in like 4 hour sprints, right? And that is available to him. He can code for 4 hours and then have a lunch break and then go back and code for hours. That's his version of joy. That's fine. And even from like the leadership perspective, being like, if my overarching goal as a leader is to create joy at work, I also have to realize that joy doesn't look the same for every single person, because this is another roadblock that I see people run into, is that like, well, joy for me looks like this, so I'm going to create it for all the employees. Except Beer Fridays is one that I always reference, because I feel like people are just like, yeah, we're going to celebrate our week by Beer Fridays. And I was like, when I was last in corporate, I had a really young son, right, who I already felt bad leaving at daycare all day. I don't want to sit here for an extra hour and drink beer with my coworkers. I want to go home and see my son. And if we're talking about a value of cares about people, I get what you're trying to do by Beer Friday, but that's not how I feel
right.
cared for, right? And we need to, I did a post a while back on LinkedIn about like the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I got challenged back with the platinum rule of do unto others as they would like to be done unto. Or I don't know. I probably got the grammar wrong, but like, we need to listen.
Right.
I got this listening theme going on this week, guys. We need
Right.
to listen to the people, and we need to take that into consideration, because don't listen and then ignore what they say. You might as well not
Right.
listen.
Right. That's why there's a process that I do with clients, and it's teams together. It's sometimes town hall. It depends on size of organization, but there are times when there have been 400 people in the room for a community discussing some issues that they had. But when you're very clear, when the leadership is very clear about the aim, and then give some guidelines and let the people figure it out, give them the issues, the challenges, the problems, that's when the ideas come to life, and you can figure out how to do things better, faster, bolder, and make the difference. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just like you said, the community a couple of times, right? And one of the things that I'm taking away is that transformation, which I think is something everybody is striving for, whether that's digital transformation or culture transformation or whatever kind of transformation you want to talk about, it happens together.
Right.
There's a togetherness principle
Right.
that is key to making that successful, because otherwise you get like what Lisa's sharing about, like, oh, I just impress the manager equals promotion, right? Like, okay, maybe
Yeah.
if a manager was impressed by how much you disrupted and pivoted and like created space for people to be transformed, right? Like, maybe. But these are like such old school, really like very deeply embedded ways of doing business, where people are like, you know what, well, that's what I had to do, right? Like, I had to come in on the weekend, I had to stay until the partners left. So like,
Yes.
now I'm the partner. My sister's a lawyer, and it's like very significant in law, right? It's like, this is just what you
Right.
do. And
Right.
like, unless we challenge those perspectives and are like, what if we didn't do that?
And it's hard to bring that up. That's why change management is also such a fad. I mean, I've got a ton of buzzword things, that a list, and the reason it is because there are three different kinds of change, and the kind that we want is transformative change. It's like I do an exercise with people, whether class or audience that I'm speaking to. We can do it together here. It takes a few seconds. So if you put your hands together and notice which thumb is on top. Now take your hands apart. Put your hands together, put your other thumb on top. Okay. Now cross your arms. Notice which arm is on top. Now uncross, cross again, but put the other arm on top. How do you feel?
Feels uncomfortable.
Yes. Feels uncomfortable. Some people say it doesn't fit. I don't want to do this. I can't do it. Those are some of the reactions. And so what is the first thing you want to do?
You want to go back to what's comfortable.
Yes, exactly. Go back to the way I've always done it. So one of the powerful messages is learning, improvement, innovation, transformation happens beginning on the edge of your discomfort. So transformation doesn't happen in the comfort zone. You have to go out of your comfort zone and try new things, different things. Some things work, some things don't work. Continually trying together to figure things out, and a new plan, a new way to do things. Study it. Might be a study of 1 minute. It might be a study of 3 weeks in order to figure out what works, what doesn't work. But that change, that transformative change, is not another buzzword is roadmap. Oh, let's figure out the roadmap, the blueprint. No. If you need to transform your organization for it to thrive and survive, that means you can't use a roadmap. A roadmap means I'm in San Jose and I want to go to Chicago. So I can drive, I can fly. There are multiple, directions, roads that I can take. But I know the beginning and I know the end point. When we're transforming, we don't have an endpoint. Instead, we need to use a compass and I developed the tool, the strategic compass, which is in my book, on my website and so forth. People can see that has the questions, but the point is, the message is, when you have a compass, you're going in a direction. And when you're going in a direction, you learn. So the pioneers came across the United States. They came across the Mississippi River. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? They had to figure out how they were going to get across the river. There weren't any bridges. Then they got to the Rocky Mountains. Oh my goodness, how are we going to get over these? So every time they get to a barrier because they're going in a direction, but they don't know the end point, they have to adapt continually, learn, make your plan, implement it, study. Okay, how are we doing? Where are we going with our direction? What can we change, improve in order to ford that river or go over that mountain? So that's why we need a compass in life, in work. We really need to use the compass, not a roadmap.
And also, now I am like, I will reveal my generation by referencing the computer game, the Oregon Trail. But how easy is it to ford the river by yourself? How easy is it to climb a mountain by yourself, right? Like, this is not, no one accomplished any of those things. No one won we've got the Stanley Cup playoffs going on right now, and I'm Canadian, so hockey is relevant always. You don't win the Stanley Cup with one person. Nobody does that, right? It takes a coach, it takes trainers, it takes the players in different positions doing different things in order to maximize that potential transformation. And if you don't give them the space and the ability to contribute what they uniquely can to the transformation, then you're always going to be missing out.
And also, we think that maybe the system is those parts you mentioned, but it's beyond that. It's you have to have the fans, you have to have the sponsors, you have to have the competitors. So the thing is,
You've got to have the guy who sells the hot dogs and
yes,
the beer.
exactly. Exactly. So we think that, no, the competition is outside. No, it's not. It is part of the system. That's why, too, we're not hearing more and more nowadays about unions, or we need to be against the unions. And so people are saying, employees are saying, we want unions, and management is saying, no, we don't want unions. But they have a contribution. And the thing is, what we have to remember is, in the system, the union and management and all the employees, they're part of the system with one aim, one compelling purpose. And so if we're all working toward one compelling purpose, we work it out, we negotiate, we support each other, we don't compete. We have to go away from an adversarial position and think in terms of, how do we support each other to get what we all want to serve the customer?
And this is what it's about, you guys, at the end of the day. I feel like we could keep talking for a very long time, but we're going to wrap it up.
It's fun.
We're going to wrap it up for you today. Marcia, if people are interested in learning more about the book, about the strategic compass, where is the best place for them to get a hold of you?
So about the book, and I just heard a few days ago that a bank president told me she's read the book twice and her CEO has listened to it on Audible 4 times. I'm like, oh my goodness. So the book is available on Amazon as Kindle and Audible and hardcover and so forth. In the book is my contact information. If you do get the book, please review it on Amazon. And then if they want to contact me, please reach out. I don't want people struggling. I really want people to email me, text me, set up a phone chat. I'm open to talking to anybody to help them. I'm always giving resources, whether it's a book or a video. I'm on YouTube. I've got my website, which is full of resources. There's a short bibliography of books. My podcasts I put on there. A blog. I write a weekly column called Ask Marcia. It's like a Dear Abby of leadership. So that's for the Silicon Valley Business Journal. And all of those things are shared on LinkedIn. So several times a week we post. There's articles to the podcasts. Every Monday I put out a poll because I'm curious. I always want to learn, what are people thinking? What are they being challenged with? And from that, oftentimes I'll write an article. So I think there are multiple ways to find me, follow me, question me, anything. But yeah, I really want to engage and help organizations get rid of the waste and not struggle. So I love to go, speak at association meetings or management offsites, facilitate those offsites, because when my clients go through a 2 or 3 day offsite, when they come in, they have the old thinking and the old questions and the way they've done things. That is not how they leave.
And that, my friends, is transformation at its finest. I cannot think of a better way to end the episode today. So for all of those resources, you guys, Marcia is tagged in this post. So just click on her name. It'll take you to her profile and you can do all of those things, connect, all the good stuff. And we're in this transformation together. I'm really excited to be surrounded by all of you guys who are my fellow disruptors on the path of life. And we're going to be able to do a lot of pivoting, disrupting, and transforming as we grow and learn. Thank you so much for your time today, Marcia. Thank you guys so much for showing up in the comments and adding your commentary. It always informs the conversation more. So really appreciate that. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.
Thank you.